Good afternoon, and welcome back to the Urban Preparedness channel. I am your host, the Urban Cockroach. Today our video is actually by request, so for those of you that don't know, you can visit us on our Facebook page, the Urban Preparedness channel. The link is actually in the bio here. And every Sunday I put a post up that asks people if they have any requests on certain things that they'd like me to do videos on. And I'll do those videos first thing Monday morning, and then the rest of the week I do videos on pretty much whatever pops into my head or things that I see a pattern of questions of on other prepper and survivalist type pages. So this week's video actually comes to you to answer some questions by a Mr. Buff and a Mrs. Beard. Miss Beard wanted me to go over different types of equipment and favorite survivalist tools, and Mr. Buff actually wanted me to talk about ways to stash some of your gear and hide things like that. And I think they really kind of play off of each other. Another request by somebody who's I'm not going to bring up his name, he asked me not to, but he wants to talk about primary, secondary, and tertiary evacuations in the event of a bug out. And I think it's perfect because all three of these kind of tie themselves into each other. It's one big gangbang of ridiculous. So to answer Mr. Buff's question, we're going to have to start with Mr. No Names first. So we're going to call him Mr. No Name for now. So Mr. No Name wanted to talk about primary, secondary, and tertiary escape routes. So the three things I do for those. First, you got to come up with the reasons why you're fleeing. The reasons why you're fleeing is pretty friggin' important, because if you're being followed, the direction and travel are very important. So for this one, we're going to come up here to my war room board, and we'll talk about some different reasons for that. So we're going to go grand scale here, because I don't want to make it too difficult to follow what I'm talking about. So we're going to assume that we're here in Michigan, but we're obviously not, but we're going to use Michigan as an example here. So let's say we are in the Detroit area in Michigan, and your bug out location is somewhere down here in Illinois. We're going to use Taylorville in Illinois. So the three main routes that you're going to want to utilize. What is the quickest route? So the quickest point between point A and point B is a straight line. The fastest way is going to be a freeway. Now, the only time you're ever going to use this route is if you are bugging out to a location and the only thing you're worried about is getting there. Okay, maybe it's before the civil unrest occurs. It's something that you think is pending and it's very tragic. You need to get there now. Straight line, quickest route. You're just going to use all the freeways as fast as you can to get to your location. Now, if you're being followed, I always talk about a 90-degree offset. So instead of heading straight from Michigan to Illinois, by taking route through Indiana, what you'll want to do is come south into Ohio. You can travel on I-75 for a long period of time, and it's going to take you down pretty quick. Now, when you get to somewhere like Frankfort, Kentucky, you're going to want to abandon that vehicle, whatever you're fleeing with, so that when you begin traveling north, a little bit of northwest, you're no longer in the vehicle that they know that you have. For instance, let's say you're being followed by the police or somebody of that sort, and you absolutely have to get away. The federal government is out to get you. You can travel south. Along I-75, there's a whole lot of places that have cameras. There's gas stations with cameras. You make sure you're on video, fueling up. You make sure your license plate gets spotted, and you continue south. Somewhere on the interstate, before you get to the road that you actually want to turn off on, you're going to abandon that vehicle and leave it there. Then you're going to hitchhike. Hitchhiking, believe it or not, still works. I have found in my years that when you hitchhike, the best way to do it is to stand next to your vehicle and flag down a car. People assume that you just ran out of gas and you need a ride to the next exit, which is perfect for the start of this. Once you start actually hitchhiking, don't walk down the road with your bag on your shoulder holding your thumb out. Nobody stops to pull that guy over. What you're going to do is walk until you find an abandoned car, take your pack off, set the pack behind the abandoned vehicle, and then take your shirt off, wave a little bit. People pull over. They're like, "Oh my God, can I give you a hand?" And you say, "Yes, absolutely. That'd be great." And then you grab your bag and you get in the car. They already stopped. They're going to give you a ride. Then you just tell them what direction you're heading and ride with them as far as they'll take you. Yes, of course, some people ask you to get back out of the vehicle, that's fine. But nobody ever remembers a face that they saw on the freeway unless they see it like the very next day on, say, America's Most Wanted, something along those lines. But that 90-degree offset, that heading south and then banging back northwest, that's so that whoever's following you continues to look for you, probably hitchhiking along I-75 through Kentucky here. And they'll continue to look for you in that general direction because they assume if you're fleeing and you're heading directly south, you're probably going to continue heading directly south. And FBI data shows that when people are on the run, they tend to head towards large population centers. So if you want to, angle yourself in a direction that heads like maybe straight for a very big city or a capital or something like that, it adds to the assumption that you're probably going to continue heading on in that direction, so that when you turn in the direction you're actually going, nobody expects it. So the next one, civil unrest occurs. All right, we're going to erase this one. All right, when civil unrest has already occurred, the things that you want to avoid while you're bugging out, major population density centers. So what you're going to do is you're going to identify the town that you're going to start in. We're going to start with Ann Arbor, Michigan here, and we'll say that you're heading to St. Peters, Missouri. So we'll circle St. Peters, Missouri. Now the important thing that we want to do from here is to look at all of the major population centers in between where you're headed in St. Peters, Missouri, and your starting location up here in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So what you'll first highlight, you'll highlight Springfield, Illinois. You don't want to go anywhere near that. Indianapolis, Indiana. You don't want to go anywhere near that. Now you need to take into consideration anything that you know is a big population center somewhere in between that isn't necessarily a capital, like Peoria, Illinois, huge city. You don't want to go anywhere near it. Fort Wayne, Indiana, huge city. You don't want to go anywhere near it. And then all you have to do is identify the easiest routes of travel that go from point A to point B while avoiding those large population densities, so that you can get where you're going without running into huge crowds of people that want to steal your stuff. Alright, and so to answer Mr. Buff's question, how do I store my things from point A to point B in a place where nobody's going to be able to find them and they're not going to go bad? That's quite simple. I use these guys here. These are Pelican 1650 cases. They are waterproof. They're foam lined. You can store a whole bunch of things inside. You can bury it deep underground. It's not biodegradable. They're not really that expensive. I think each one of these cost me about 120 bucks a piece. I got used to utilizing these when I was still in the military. We used them for everything, and they work absolutely amazing. So this is actually what I use to store my geocaching, things like that. And I store those along our pre-designated route. So I'm not going to put in here where my start location and where my end location is. But what I do is I figure out where my start point is, and I figure out where my end point is going to be. I travel along those distances, and I figure out roundabouts what the mileage based on your vehicle is. So when you have to stop for fuel, that's probably a pretty good spot to put supplies. In a Titawaki situation, for those of you that don't know what Titawaki means, it means the end of the world as we know it. It's what everybody used before they started using shit hit the fan. So we reach a point of Titawaki. All of these need to be stored in places where you're willing to rest for the day, where your vehicle is probably going to be running low on fuel. That way you can fuel up, you can get your rest, and you can get some food. All right? Now, I don't recommend storing gasoline in a big barrel buried underground. One, it's illegal. Two, gas degenerates. So whatever you can scrap along the way. And one of the pieces of equipment I actually use for that is a fuel siphon pump. You can get a fuel siphon pump anywhere at a Harbor Freight. You can get them at Ace Delco. You can get them in a million friggin' locations. I only paid like $8 for this one. It works fantastic. Every once in a while the hose blows off. I just stuff it back in there, a little bit of rubber cement, but the gasoline does dissolve that rubber cement, so you're going to end up having to do it again in the future. But that's fine. But that little piece of equipment, combined with a car Slim Jim and a coat hanger and a little wooden wedge that I keep tucked inside my bug-out bag, will get you fueled back up along your route. Even if the gas stations are sold out, You can always fuel up off of abandoned cars on the side of the road. You can always fuel up off of a car in a driveway somewhere. Not that I would ever suggest larceny or theft or anything of that sort. Don't break the law, but in a Titawaki situation, the police aren't coming and it's probably a huge emergency. And if that vehicle's not being utilized already, chances are the people that owned it aren't around anymore. So, of course, borrow their gas. I don't think they're going to mind. As for other pieces of equipment that I find to be really important, I think a good Gerber or multi-tool is very important to throw in your bag because you never know when you're going to need a flathead screwdriver, a Phillips head screwdriver, a pair of scissors, a pocket knife. Something else that I always encompass is exactly that, a compass. Now, a compass alone is not going to do you any good. However, a compass, a map, and a very important piece of equipment that nobody seems to ever have in their supplies, a protractor. For those of you that were in the military, you've seen this a million times, so you know exactly what it is, but a protractor is used in combination with a map and a compass to help you find your bearing, get from point A to point B, and it's going to be really important when you're trying to find those packages of Pelican cases that you've been stashing all over the place. Nothing's going to suck worse than going out and burying all of these geocaches with food stashes and food and other fantastic things inside that you're going to need at the end of the world. And then you get almost to where it's at and you absolutely cannot find it. But with a 10-digit grid, you're going to get within 1 meter and you're going to find out exactly where that is. Now, if you want, I can do a video on land navigation. I'm not going to get into that right now because it's going to take literally a 20-minute video to fully explain it all, and I don't want to try to squeeze that into this one. So I hope I covered most of your questions today. Those are my primary, my secondary, my tertiary escape routes. You're going to want to plan those ahead of time, not after the fact. I covered a little bit of equipment that I like taking in my bug out and the reasons why. And I covered Mr. Buff's question of how to store my dry goods. I personally use Pelican 1650 cases. They're a little on the pricey side. There's some other things you can get. Some people use PVC pipe and they cap it off and they seal it. Personally, I like something that I can open, reclose, open, reclose. I don't have to worry about gluing it, sealing it, making sure it's dry before I bury it in the ground. And I want something that's going to be large enough it'll be easy for me to find when I actually start digging around. It's not like there's going to be people walking down the freeway with metal detectors at the end of the world trying to find my caches stashed along I-75 or my caches stashed along 40 or anything along those lines. So, also, do not bury your firearms. 1, it's a federal offense, and 2, they're highly metallic, so if some guy does decide he wants to go down the freeway with a metal detector, he just found a free gun that's registered to you. Don't bury your firearms. Ammunition? Sure, go ahead. If somebody digs up your ammo, they didn't just accidentally find a weapon that they can kill somebody with to send you to prison. They just found ammo. Sure, might have your fingerprint on it, but unless they can guarantee that you were in the same location at the same time it was fired, you're not going to jail. But I think I covered everything in today's video. If you like my video, please drop a comment down below, hit like, hit subscribe, come back and visit us again. As always, the cockroach has other stuff to do today, so I'm going to scurry on out of here. Thank you very much. Please read your Constitution, know your rights, and prepare for the end before it gets here.